The junkyard was always silent after sunset. The old cars sat in rows like broken soldiers, their bodies rusted, their eyes of glass shattered. Metal scraps lay scattered across the ground, catching the moonlight like dull silver teeth. Jake walked slowly between the wrecks, his boots crunching against the gravel. He worked there every day, sorting broken machines, gathering pieces that could be sold. But tonight he was not looking for metal. Tonight he was listening. For the last 3 nights he had heard something strange. Not the wind, not the rats, something else. A soft sound like whispering, like someone trying to breathe quietly, afraid of being heard. He stopped near an old bus. Its windows were broken, its doors hanging half open. The sound was there again. A cough, quick, soft but real. Jake's heart jumped. He turned his flashlight slowly. The light slid across the seats of the empty bus. Nothing, just dust and old wires. But when he lowered the beam, he froze. There, under the bus, was a small shadow. Not a rat. Not a dog. Bigger. Who's there? Jake called. His voice was steady, but his hand shook. For a moment, nothing moved. Then he saw 2 eyes glowing faintly in the dark. They were not human eyes. They were wider, brighter, shining like tiny moons. Jake took a step back. His mind screamed to run, but his feet stayed still. Slowly, the shadow crawled forward, and then another shadow followed. A mother and a child. They were not human. Their skin was pale, almost silver, with faint lines that shimmered like tiny rivers under the moonlight. The mother held the little one close, shielding her with thin arms. Her face was sharp, beautiful, but filled with fear. The child was small, weak, coughing softly against her mother's chest. Jake's breath caught in his throat. He had never seen anything like them. Aliens. Real aliens. The mother raised her head, her eyes glowing in the dark. She did not speak. She only stared at him, waiting to see what he would do. Jake slowly lowered his flashlight. "I'm not gonna hurt you," he whispered. The child coughed again, a sound so weak that it twisted Jake's heart. He looked at the mother, then at the little one. They were thin, too thin, hungry, afraid. He thought about leaving. He thought about calling someone, but he didn't. Something inside him told him not to. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a half-eaten sandwich he had saved from lunch. Slowly, he placed it on the ground and pushed it closer to them. The mother's eyes narrowed. She did not move, but the child's eyes widened. She reached out a tiny hand, trembling. The mother stopped her, whispering something in a language Jake could not understand. But the child looked up at her with desperate eyes. The mother hesitated, then finally let her take the food. The little girl bit into it quickly, chewing with small, hungry sounds. Jake felt a lump in his throat. The mother kept staring at him, her eyes sharp, her body tense like a wild animal ready to protect her young. But she did not attack. She did not run. She simply watched him, testing him. Jake stayed quiet. He knew trust would take time. Minutes passed. The sandwich was gone. The child curled against her mother, eyes closing in tiredness. Jake took a step back. I'll bring more tomorrow," he whispered. The mother tilted her head, her eyes still locked on him. She did not answer. Jake turned and walked away, his heart beating fast. His hands shook, not from fear, but from something else, something heavy. He had seen their faces. He had seen the hunger in the child's eyes. He couldn't forget it. When he reached the edge of the junkyard, he stopped and looked back. The bus was silent again, the shadows hidden, but he knew they were still there watching. That night, Jake could not sleep. He kept thinking about them. Who were they? Why were they hiding in a junkyard? And what would happen if someone else found them? The world would not forgive. The law would not forgive. But Jake felt something stronger than fear inside him. He didn't know it yet, but his life had already changed. Tomorrow he would bring them food again, and tomorrow he would take the first step into a story far greater than he could ever imagine. The next morning, Jake could not stop thinking about the shadows in the junkyard. All through work, his hands moved on their own, sorting scrap, lifting rusted doors, stacking wires, but his mind was back in that broken bus. The image of the little girl's thin fingers holding the sandwich haunted him. The way she had eaten so fast, like she had not tasted food for days. And the mother's eyes, sharp, protective, but filled with silent pain. By sunset, Jake made a decision. He packed extra food from his small kitchen, bread, canned beans, an apple. He wrapped it in an old cloth and slipped it into his bag. When the sky turned dark and the junkyard was empty of workers, Jake walked back to the same bus. His steps were slow, careful. His ears picked up every sound, the crunch of gravel, the buzz of night insects, the distant barking of a stray dog. He stopped in front of the bus. It looked the same as yesterday, silent, broken, abandoned. Jake crouched down and whispered, "I brought food." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, like last night, he saw two faint eyes in the shadows. The mother. And behind her, the small glow of the child's gaze. Jake slowly placed the bundle of food on the ground and stepped back. The mother did not move. Her body was tense, ready to run or fight, but the child's tiny hand tugged at her. Jake could hear the girl's soft cough. Finally, the mother reached out with long, slender fingers. She pulled the food close, unwrapped it, and sniffed carefully. Jake stayed quiet. He could feel the test in her silence. Would the food harm them? Was he a threat? The child picked up the apple first. Her eyes widened as if it was treasure. She bit into it, juice running down her chin. For the first time, Jake saw something new in her face, a smile. Small, weak, but real. Jake felt something tighten in his chest. The mother still stared at him. She did not eat. Instead, she gave the rest to her daughter. Only when the little girl was full did the mother take a small bite of bread. Jake noticed how carefully she ate. Every move measured, every sound quiet, as if she had lived too long in fear. Finally, Jake spoke. "What's your name?" The mother's eyes narrowed. She did not answer. "Mine's Jake," he said softly. I work here. I live alone, no family, just me." The child looked up at him. Her voice was soft, broken, but in English she whispered one word. "Hungry." Jake blinked. His heart twisted. She could speak, at least a little. The mother put a hand over her daughter's mouth, whispering fast in a strange language. The sounds were flowing, almost like water. Then she looked at Jake again, her expression hard, warning. Jake raised his hands. "It's okay. I won't tell anyone." The night wind whistled through the broken bus windows. For a long while they sat in silence, Jake outside, the mother and child inside. Two worlds divided by shadows and fear. Finally, Jake stood. "I'll bring more tomorrow." He turned to leave. But before he stepped away, he heard a small voice again. "The girls, Jake." He froze. Slowly, he looked back. The child was peeking from behind her mother's arm. Her glowing eyes watched him with something he had not seen before. Trust. The mother pulled her back quickly, shaking her head. But the moment was there, a crack in the wall of fear. Jake walked back to his small home at the edge of the junkyard. His heart was racing. He could not explain why, but he felt lighter. The sound of his name, spoken by that fragile voice, stayed with him through the night. The next day, Jake brought more food. He brought water too in an old bottle. This time, when he reached the bus, the mother stepped out halfway. It was the first time he saw her fully. She was tall, her skin glowing faintly under the moonlight. Her eyes bright and unblinking, she looked both fragile and powerful. Like a blade made of glass, she did not speak. She simply stood between Jake and her daughter, her body a shield. Jake held out the water bottle. "For her cough," he said. The mother hesitated, then slowly took it. Their fingers touched for a brief second. Her skin was cool, smooth, not like human skin. She pulled back quickly, but Jake noticed something new in her eyes. Not just suspicion, but also exhaustion. She was tired of running, tired of fear. The child drank the water, her cough easing for a moment. She giggled softly, a sound that lit up the darkness. Jake smiled. She has a strong laugh. For the first time, the mother's lips moved. A whisper. Her voice was low, musical, but sharp like crystal. Jake could not understand the words, but he knew what they meant. She was warning him again. "Don't come closer." Jake nodded. He respected it, but he also knew he would return because something had already begun. A bond, a silent promise. That night, as Jake walked home, he felt the weight of something bigger than himself. He didn't know who they were or why they were hiding, but he knew one thing for certain: they needed him, and maybe he needed them too. The junkyard slept under the silver moon. Old machines stood like silent giants, their broken shapes casting long shadows. Jake moved carefully, carrying a small bag of food in one hand and a blanket in the other. It had been 3 nights since he first met them. Every night he returned. Every night he brought food. And every night he felt the same weight inside his chest, fear mixed with hope. When he reached the bus, the air felt heavier. The little girl was waiting this time. She peeked out first, her bright eyes shining in the dark. "Jake," she whispered, her voice soft, weak, but full of warmth. Jake smiled. "Hey, kiddo. I brought something." He held out the blanket. The girl touched it with her small fingers as if testing if it was real. Her mother stepped forward, her tall form tense and protective. She took the blanket from Jake's hands without a word. The mother wrapped it around her daughter and gave a slow nod. It was not thanks spoken aloud, but Jake felt it like one. The girl nibbled on bread while Jake sat outside the bus. He didn't try to get closer. He didn't ask questions. But tonight, something changed. The mother finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, heavy and edged with pain. The words were broken but clear enough. "You human?" Jake turned, surprised. "Yeah, I'm human. And you?" The mother's eyes narrowed. For a moment he thought she would fall silent again. But then she said one word. "Exile." Jake frowned. "Exile? You mean you were cast out?" She nodded slowly. The little girl coughed again, her small body shaking. The mother pressed her close, whispering in that strange, flowing language Jake didn't understand. Jake felt his heart twist. He leaned forward. "She's sick, isn't she?" The mother's sharp eyes flashed to him. Her silence was the answer. Jake's mind raced. Food was not enough. Water was not enough. The girl needed medicine. But what kind? How could he help without knowing what they really were? The junkyard was silent, but Jake felt danger crawling in the air. As if the night itself was listening, he tried gently. "Why here? Why hide in a junkyard?" The mother looked at him for a long moment, her eyes glowing like cold stars. Then she whispered again, each word slow and heavy. "Hunters. Law. Death." Jake froze. He understood enough. Someone was after them. And if found, they would not be spared. The little girl tugged at her mother's arm. She looked up at Jake with tired eyes. "Safe?" she asked in broken English. Jake swallowed hard. "Yes," he said softly. "You're safe here." The mother's gaze pierced him, testing his truth. Then slowly she lowered her eyes. But safety was only a word. That night Jake could not sleep. He sat in his small home beside the junkyard window watching the road. Around midnight he heard it, engines. Not normal cars. He knew the sound of every vehicle in the area. These were different, heavy, slow. Jake stepped outside, hiding in the shadows. Black trucks rolled past the junkyard gates. Their headlights swept across the piles of metal like searchlights. Men in dark uniforms stepped out, scanning the ground with devices that blinked and beeped. Jake's breath caught. "They're searching." He rushed back inside, grabbed a flashlight, and hurried toward the bus. His boots barely made a sound as he ran between the old machines. When he reached the bus, he whispered harshly, "You have to stay quiet." "They're here." The mother's eyes widened. She pulled her daughter close, wrapping the blanket tight. The little girl's cough threatened to break the silence, but the mother covered her mouth gently. Jake crouched low, listening. The men were close. Their footsteps echoed against the metal. One voice barked, "Scan everything." "They're hiding somewhere. Orders are clear." Jake's heart pounded. His hands were sweating. He glanced at the mother. She was calm, almost too calm, her glowing eyes sharp in the dark. She had been through this before, but the child trembled. Jake pressed a finger to his lips, mouthing the word, "Quiet." The searchlights grew brighter. Shadows moved across the bus windows. One man came so close that Jake could hear the metal of his boots scrape against the gravel. Jake grabbed a loose sheet of iron lying nearby. When the man's light swung near the bus, Jake threw the metal in the opposite direction. It clattered loudly across the junkyard, over there. The man shouted. The soldiers ran toward the noise. Jake exhaled slowly. His whole body shook, but he kept still. The mother's eyes were on him, sharp, searching. She understood what he had done. Minutes passed. Engines roared again. The trucks pulled away. Silence returned. Jake let out a long breath. His heart still raced, but he managed a small smile. "Close one." The little girl peeked from her mother's arms, her eyes wide. Then she whispered, "Safe." "Jake?" Jake's throat tightened. The word felt heavier than any promise. The mother finally spoke again. Her voice was soft but clear. Why, help? Jake looked at her for a long moment. He didn't know the full answer himself, but he spoke the truth that rose from his chest. No one deserves to be hunted. Not you, not her. You're not alone anymore. The mother studied him, her face unreadable. Then slowly she lowered her head. Not a bow, not surrender, but something close to acceptance. Jake knew the danger was not over. The hunters would return. The law she spoke of would not stop, but tonight a fragile trust had been born. The junkyard looked calm in daylight. Workers came and went, stacking old machines, dragging broken cars into lines. But Jake's heart carried a secret no one could see. Every clatter of metal made him tense. Every shadow between the wrecks felt alive. He had saved the alien mother and daughter last night, but he knew the hunters would return. They had not given up. They never would. By sunset, the workers left. Silence returned. Jake stood at the junkyard gates, staring at the dark road. His instincts screamed that tonight would not be quiet. He turned back, moving quickly toward the broken bus where the two were hiding. The little girl was curled in her mother's arms, her breathing shallow, the cough worse than before. The mother's glowing eyes met Jake's as he approached. "Danger," she whispered. Just one word, but it carried 1,000 meanings. Jake nodded. "I know. They'll come again." He had spent the day preparing. He dragged heavy scrap to block certain paths. He cleared a hidden tunnel under a pile of metal sheets, an escape route only he knew. He looked at the mother. "If they find us, we run. Follow me no matter what." The mother didn't answer, but her eyes, sharp as blades, softened for a brief moment. She trusted him, at least enough to try. The night came heavy and fast. Engines rumbled in the distance. Not one truck this time, many. Their headlights cut through the dark like white swords. Jake's breath quickened. He crouched low, signaling the mother to stay hidden. The black trucks rolled inside the junkyard. Soldiers in dark armor poured out, carrying strange scanners that blinked red and green. Their leader's voice cut through the night. "Search everywhere. Leave nothing unchecked. The fugitives are here." The little girl coughed once, a sound so small, but to Jake it was thunder. His heart nearly stopped. He pressed a finger to his lips, begging her to stay quiet. The soldiers spread out. Flashlights swept across the wrecks. Boots crunched on gravel. Metal rang as they pushed aside doors and barrels. Jake whispered fast to the mother, "We have to move now." He led them between piles of old car doors, keeping low. The junkyard became a maze of shadows and sharp edges. Every step had to be silent. Every breath controlled, but a soldier's light suddenly swung their way. "Stop!" A voice shouted. Jake's blood turned to ice. The mother grabbed her daughter, holding her tight. Jake acted fast. He grabbed a loose pipe from the ground and threw it across the yard. It clanged loudly on the other side. The soldier turned, running toward the noise. Jake pulled the mother's arm. "This way!" They ran, ducking under rusted frames, crawling through narrow gaps. The little girl's cough almost betrayed them again, but the mother covered her mouth gently as they moved. Behind them, shouts grew louder. "They're close." "Spread out." Jake's heart hammered. He reached the tunnel he had cleared earlier. It was hidden under a mound of twisted wires and iron sheets. He pulled the cover aside, revealing a narrow crawl space leading deep under the scrap. "In here," he hissed. The mother looked at the dark tunnel, then at Jake. For a second, fear flashed in her glowing eyes. But the soldiers were closing in. She clutched her daughter and slid inside. Jake followed, dragging the cover back over the entrance. Darkness swallowed them. The tunnel was tight, filled with the smell of dust and rust. The little girl whimpered softly. Jake whispered, "Shh, almost there." Above them, footsteps thundered. Soldiers were right on top, scanning the ground. Jake held his breath. If they discovered the tunnel, it was over. One soldier's boot stopped inches from the cover. The scanner beeped faintly. Jake's body froze. The mother held her daughter so close that even the child's cough was trapped in silence. Then another soldier called out, "Nothing here! Move!" The boots moved away. The beeping faded. Jake let out a slow breath. His chest ached from holding it in. They crawled forward until the tunnel opened into a hidden space between stacked cars. "Safe for now." The mother looked at Jake. Her voice was low but steady. "Why, help us!" "Risk your life?" Jake met her glowing eyes. His answer was simple. "Because no one else will." The little girl reached out, her tiny hand touching Jake's rough fingers. Her voice, soft and trembling, carried only one word: family. Jake's throat tightened. He had no family of his own. Not anymore. But in that moment he felt something stir deep inside him, a bond stronger than fear. Engines roared again outside. The soldiers were not leaving. The leader shouted, "They're here somewhere. Find them before dawn." Jake clenched his fists. This was only the beginning. The chase had started, and it would not stop until someone was caught. The junkyard was no longer just a place of broken machines. To Jake, it had become something else. A battlefield of shadows, a shelter of secrets, and now, a home for 3 souls bound by survival. Days passed since the soldiers searched. Every night Jake returned, bringing food, water, and small things to comfort the alien mother and her daughter. Every night the danger grew. But so did something else: trust. The little girl was the first to change. Her fear softened into curiosity. She no longer hid when Jake came. Instead, she peeked out with glowing eyes and a shy smile. Sometimes she even giggled when he pretended to drop bread clumsily or made a silly face. Her laugh was weak, but it filled the dark junkyard with a light Jake had not felt in years. The mother, however, was different. She stayed guarded. Every move, every glance was sharp. She watched Jake like a hawk, as if expecting betrayal at any moment. Yet she no longer pushed him away. She accepted his help in silence. One night, as the wind whistled through the piles of scrap, Jake noticed the little girl's cough had worsened. Her small body shook with every breath. The mother tried to soothe her, pressing a cool hand against her forehead, but worry glowed in her eyes. Jake sat outside the bus, thinking hard. Food and water weren't enough. If she stayed sick, the girl would not last. He looked around the junkyard. Broken machines, shattered engines, dead batteries. But to Jake, they were more than junk. They were pieces of possibility. The next day, while the world outside lived its normal life, Jake worked in secret. He pulled out tools, wires, old fans, and cracked glass tubes. His hands moved with memory. He had once fixed machines for a living before life had left him alone in this rusted place. This time, he wasn't fixing for money. He was building for hope. That night, Jake carried something strange into the bus. A small humming device built from scrap. It looked rough, with wires sticking out and a broken fan spinning inside, but it glowed faintly. The mother stiffened as he entered, her body tense. "What is this?" she asked in her broken English. Jake placed the device on the ground. "It's not perfect, but it can help her breathe easier." He pointed to the fan inside. "Air, clean for her lungs." The little girl's eyes widened. She coughed again, weakly, but reached toward the machine with trembling hands. The mother stepped forward, blocking her, suspicious. "Why, I do this?" Jake met her gaze. His voice was steady. "Because she deserves a chance. And because I couldn't live with myself if I just watched her suffer." For a long moment, silence filled the bus. The mother's glowing eyes searched his face, looking for lies. But Jake had none to give. Finally, she stepped aside. She lifted her daughter gently, placing her near the device. Jake switched it on. The small fan hummed, pushing filtered air through the tube. The girl breathed in slowly. Then again, her cough eased just slightly, but enough to bring relief. Her lips curved into a small smile. "Better," she whispered. Jake exhaled a shaky breath. He hadn't realized how tightly his chest had been clenched until that moment. The mother's eyes softened just a little. She touched the device with her long fingers, tracing the wires. "You build hope," she said slowly, struggling with the words. Jake smiled faintly. "Maybe, or maybe just a machine. But if it helps her, that's enough." Over the next nights, Jake worked harder. He brought small tools and scraps, fixing the device piece by piece. Sometimes the little girl sat beside him, watching with wide eyes, asking small questions in broken English. "What is this?" she asked once, pointing at a screwdriver. Jake chuckled. "Tool. It helps me fix things." She repeated the word softly, her voice like a fragile song. "Tool?" The mother often stayed silent, but Jake noticed she watched him differently now. Not just with suspicion, but with something else. Something closer to respect. One evening, as Jake tightened a wire, the mother finally spoke more than one sentence. "On my world," she said quietly, "machines mean war. Here, you use machine for care." Jake paused, meeting her eyes. "On my world, machines do both. Depends on the person using them." Her expression did not change, but her silence carried thought. But peace never lasted long. One night, distant lights flashed again on the horizon. Trucks, soldiers. The hunters were searching nearby towns. The danger crept closer with each day. Jake knew time was running out. As the little girl slept with the device humming softly beside her, Jake whispered to the mother, "They'll find you sooner or later." "We need a plan." The mother's eyes glowed in the dark. "Run, always run." Jake shook his head. "You can't run forever, not with her sick. You need more than hiding. You need family?" The word hung heavy between them. The mother's gaze lingered on Jake for a long time. Then she said softly, almost to herself, "Family. Dangerous word." Jake leaned back, his eyes on the sleeping child. Maybe, but it's also the strongest one. The junkyard had become too dangerous. Every night the soldiers' truck circled closer. Every day Jake saw more signs, footprints in the dirt, broken locks, tools left moved. The hunters were not far now. Jake stood at the edge of the bus, watching the alien mother wrap her daughter in the blanket he had given them. The child's small face looked pale, her cough sharper than before. The little machine he had built helped her breathe, but it was not enough. "They'll come soon," Jake said quietly. "We can't stay here anymore." The mother's glowing eyes locked on him. "Where go?" Jake shook his head. "I don't know, but anywhere is better than being trapped here." The little girl tugged at Jake's hand, her tiny fingers trembling. "Safe, Jake," she whispered. Her voice pushed the decision into his chest like a blade. He could not fail her now. That night the air was heavy, charged like a storm waiting to break. Jake packed food, water, and the small device into a bag. He cleared the hidden tunnel again, but deep inside he knew it would not be enough this time. Engines roared before midnight. The hunters had come, louder, stronger, more ruthless than before. Trucks crashed through the junkyard gates. Lights exploded across the piles of metal. "Search everything," their leader shouted. "They're here." "Tonight they don't escape." The mother's eyes widened. She grabbed her daughter close. Jake took a deep breath. "Follow me." No hesitation. They ran into the maze of broken machines. Soldiers shouted, beams of light cutting through the dark like knives. The ground shook as boots pounded against gravel. Jake ducked behind a stack of old engines, pulling the mother and child close. He whispered, "Stay low, quiet." But the little girl coughed again, sharp and loud. "Over here." A soldier roared. Jake cursed under his breath. He grabbed a rusted metal pipe and swung it at the nearest pile of junk. The crash echoed across the yard, drawing the soldiers away. "Move," Jake hissed. They darted through the shadows, weaving between wrecked buses and broken tires. The mother's long steps carried her daughter with grace, but Jake could see the fear in her glowing eyes. Bullets suddenly tore through the night, striking the metal around them. Sparks exploded. The little girl screamed, clinging to her mother's neck. Jake grabbed a sheet of iron and held it like a shield as they ran. The noise of gunfire filled the junkyard, deafening, terrifying. "Stop them," the leader shouted. "Alive or dead?" Jake's lungs burned as they reached the tunnel entrance. He shoved the cover aside. "Go now." The mother slid in with her daughter. Jake crawled after them, dragging the cover back just as soldiers rounded the corner. Their lights flashed inches from the tunnel's edge. The crawl space was dark, filled with dust. The little girl whimpered softly, but Jake whispered, "Almost there. Just a little more." The tunnel opened into the hidden space between stacked cars. They stumbled out, gasping for air. But before Jake could catch his breath, a heavy spotlight blinded them. The soldiers were waiting. "Hands up," the leader barked, his weapon raised. Jake stepped forward, spreading his arms. "Wait, don't shoot." "She's just a child," the leader sneered. "Not a child. A fugitive, and anyone helping them dies with them." The mother's eyes burned bright. She stepped in front of Jake, holding her daughter tight. For the first time she spoke loudly, her voice sharp and commanding. "You touch her, you die." The soldiers hesitated, surprised by her strength. But Jake saw their fingers tighten on their triggers. He had seconds to act. He grabbed a loose chain from the ground and swung it at the spotlight, shattering the glass. Darkness swallowed them again. The sudden blackness broke the soldiers' aim. "Run!" Jake shouted. They sprinted toward the far fence. Bullets whizzed past, sparks flying as they hit the scrap metal. Jake's chest burned, his legs heavy, but he kept going. The little girl clung to her mother, her glowing eyes wide with fear and hope. They reached the fence. Jake kicked aside loose boards, revealing a narrow gap. "Through here!" The mother pushed her daughter first, then crawled after her. Jake followed, his back scraping against the wood. The night opened wide before them. Fields, silence, and stars stretching across the sky. For the first time, they were outside the junkyard, free. But freedom was fragile. The hunters would not stop. As they caught their breath in the grass, the mother turned to Jake. Her face was pale, her voice low. "You are not just human. You family now." Jake swallowed hard. The word struck deep inside him. He looked at the little girl who was smiling weakly through her sickness, clutching his hand. For the first time in years, Jake felt something more powerful than fear, purpose. But behind them, the trucks roared again. The chase was not over, and the truth of who they really were was about to change everything. The night outside the junkyard was cold and wide. Stars spread across the sky like silver fire, but Jake had no time to admire them. The engines of the black truck still roared behind him. The hunters had not stopped. He ran across the open field with the alien mother and her daughter close behind. His chest ached, his legs burned, but he did not slow. The little girl clung to her mother's arms, coughing hard with each step. Jake's heart pounded. She won't last much longer. They reached a line of trees. Shadows swallowed them, hiding them from the headlights. Jake led them into the forest, pushing through branches and roots. Behind them, voices shouted, dogs barked, and searchlights cut through the darkness. "They won't stop," Jake whispered. "We need to make a stand." The mother's glowing eyes met his. Her voice was low, steady, filled with sorrow. "If they take us, we die. If you stay, you die too," Jake shook his head. "I'd rather die fighting than watch them take her." The little girl lifted her head weakly. "Safe." "Jake," she whispered, clinging tighter to his hand. Her words gave him strength. They reached an old cabin at the edge of the forest. Broken, abandoned, its roof half gone. Jake pushed the door open, dust filling the air. "We rest here," he said, guiding them inside. The mother laid her daughter down gently on the floor. The child coughed, her tiny body trembling. Jake placed the small breathing device beside her. The soft hum filled the room, easing her breathing just enough. Outside, engines grew louder. The hunters were close. Jake grabbed a rusted axe from the corner of the cabin. His hands shook, but his eyes were steady. "I'll hold them off." The mother rose, her tall form glowing faintly in the dark. "No, I fight too." Jake stared at her. For the first time, she didn't look only like a frightened exile. She looked like a warrior. "Who are you, really?" Jake asked. The mother hesitated. Then in a low voice, she spoke. "On my world, my mate was a leader. A voice for peace. Enemies hunted us. They killed him. We ran. My daughter carries his blood. That is why they will not stop." Jake's chest tightened. This was bigger than he imagined. She wasn't just a refugee. She was carrying the last hope of a broken world, and now he was part of it. The cabin shook as trucks surrounded it. Soldiers shouted. Doors slammed. "Come out!" The leader's voice boomed. "There is no escape. Surrender now or we take you by force." Jake gripped the axe tighter. He glanced at the little girl. She looked at him with tired but trusting eyes. In that moment, he made his choice. He would not surrender. He stepped out of the cabin, standing tall in the cold night. The soldiers aimed their weapons. The leader sneered. "You're only human. You think you can fight us?" Jake's voice was steady. "Maybe I can't, but I won't let you take them." The leader raised his hand. "Fire!" Before the order could land, the mother burst from the cabin, her eyes blazing like fire. She raised her arms, and for the first time, Jake saw her true strength. Energy rippled from her skin like waves of light, throwing soldiers back. Their scanners sparked and failed. The hunters shouted in fear. "Contain her!" Quickly, Jake ran forward, swinging the axe at the spotlight on the nearest truck, shattering it. Darkness swallowed the field. Bullets sprayed, but in the confusion, the mother's light shielded them. The little girl coughed inside the cabin, her weak cry piercing through the chaos. Jake turned, fear gripping him. If they didn't end this now, she would not survive. The mother's voice rang out strong and sharp. "Jake, take her, run!" Jake shook his head. "Not without you." Her eyes locked on his, filled with both fire and sorrow. Family protects, always go. In that instant, Jake understood. She was ready to sacrifice herself to save her daughter. But he couldn't let her do it alone. He charged forward, grabbing the mother's arm. "We fight together. That's what family means." For the first time, her hard expression cracked. She nodded once. The battle was brief but fierce. Soldiers fell back against the mother's bursts of light. Jake fought with raw strength, swinging the axe, knocking weapons from hands. The forest shook with noise, but step by step they pushed through. Finally, with the last of her strength, the mother released a blinding wave of energy. Trucks stalled. Soldiers dropped their weapons, covering their eyes. Jake scooped the little girl into his arms, the machine still humming against her chest. He looked back at the mother. Her body was weak, trembling, but her eyes burned with fire. "Run," she whispered. Together, they disappeared into the trees. By dawn, the sounds of the hunters were gone. Jake sat under the rising sun, the little girl sleeping in his arms, her breathing soft and steady. The mother sat beside him, exhausted but alive. For a long time, no one spoke. Only the sound of morning birds filled the air. Finally, the little girl stirred. Her eyes opened, glowing faintly. She looked at Jake and smiled weakly. Her voice, fragile but full of warmth, carried one word: family. Jake's eyes stung. He held her close, his heart heavy and light at the same time. He looked at the mother. She nodded, her expression soft for the first time. "You are one of us now," she whispered. Jake breathed deeply, watching the sun climb higher. He didn't know what dangers still waited, or how far they would have to run. But he knew one thing for certain: he was no longer alone. And in a galaxy ruled by cold law and endless war, one human had become something greater: family to those who had no one else.